Sadako, can I turn the table back to you and ask you specifically within this collection of over 300 Surimono, what are some of the more important or more startling pieces that you found? What makes this collection particularly unique amongst the other collections that I briefly mentioned? And what are the strengths of this collection? A small question.
Sure. I think you've already talked about, but first of all, the Drosten Kenadjian collection is noted for its high quality and great condition and comprehensive subject matter. And it's, furthermore, it includes some very unusual and complicated works that, ideal fit for educational institution like Yale. And here, this is one of the most spectacular series in the collection and was designed by Schumann. And Schumann was noted for its love of nature and his remarkable array of carefully gradated, delicate colors. Please observe his range of colors. There's, the golden yellow to velvety black to blue-gray to, splendid tones of silky white to, icy blue. Anyway, it's really a beautiful coloring. There are only 8 designs known from this spectacular series, and this collection has 7 of them. All its beautiful condition and once owned by the celebrated Parisian collector, Henri Viver. Unlike other artists, Schumann seems to have had his own atelier where he not only designed prints, but also carved the wood blocks and even printed them for both himself and other artists. The accompanying kyokai, the poems, explain that the butterflies are intended to evoke images of the courtesans frolicking in New Year celebration and at work in the pleasure quarters. Next one, please. These 2 remaining images, the 2 of the 7, illustrate mostly moths. It is clear that the artist was spending time observing nature and portraying it with an attention to accuracy that was prevalent in the arts of the time. Next. This is another gorgeous series entitled The 6 Immortal Samurai Poets. The set is one of the masterpieces of the era, demonstrating both the artist's brilliance combined with the kyoka poets' sentiments toward and their insights into samurai culture. Issued circa 1827, these lavishly produced prints were created during a time of domestic peace, when former samurai turned to other professions. So the poems may be read as nostalgic and at times having satiric twists. Here in these noble portraits, we can see the extreme attention to detail and elaborate printing techniques such as deep karazuri coffrage without coloring. Each figure is placed against thick brass ground resembling gold. The collection holds 2 versions of this Surimono of the 6th poet, Taira no Tadanori. However, each impression has a different poem. As so few impressions were pulled for these costly commissions, the blocks remained in fine state at the end of a run. Since the poems were carved in separate blocks, the blocks for the image could be reused for another patron. It is interesting to speculate which impression is the first. The left-hand side print appears to be later printing, judging from the background printing, but the style of the calligraphy is close to the others in the set. So the pair provides excellent study material for future research. Another treasure in the collection is this banquet scene at the Sagamiya restaurant in the eastern hills of Kyoto, created on the largest washi sheet of paper then available, sized about 16 by 21 inches. Attendees at this party include kabuki players, their patrons, and courtesans, each of whom wrote a haiku poem to commemorate this auspicious occasion. Another unusual aspect of this work is that this was made in the Kyoto and Osaka area rather than in Edo. Landscapes are rather unusual in the genre of Surimono. This work, made circa 1820, shows the three celebrated scenic spots in Japan. From the top, Itsukushima Shrine, Amano Hashidate or Bridge to Heaven, and Matsushima, or Pine Islands. The artist Utagawa Toyohiro was a teacher of the famous Hiroshige, who created the 53 stations of the Tokaido Road. Toyohiro produced a lovely body of Surimono prints, in addition to his better-known bijinga, or paintings of the beauties. Lastly, I would like to show this very unusual work by an unidentified artist, signed Senryu. This is among the few that have been included in the catalog representing unknown artists worthy to be explored. It is most likely made circa 1840, and it bears haiku rather than the more pervasive waka form in 31 syllables. The below are percussion instruments and a cushion covered with cloth in imported textiles originated in China, South and Southeast Asia. Despite the fact that Japan was officially closed to the outside world throughout most of the Edo period, knowledge of foreign cultures and products did sneak in. We find many surprises like this in the collection. Thank you.
Thank you, Sadako. Again, illuminating and so many different points of view from this collection that we can study forever. So I'd like to ask you and Adam separately, since you're so familiar with the 300 prints in this collection, what are the special discoveries or the surprises that you found within them that you didn't anticipate finding?
Sure. I have to tell you my eureka moment. Soma ware, or somayaki by Hokusai, was one of the most puzzling surimono in the collection. I immediately liked it very much because of its delicate coloring of light blue, indigo, yellow, tan, brown, black, silver, and gold, and enigmatic composition. The tea-bowl in the ground is decorated with a typical horse design produced in the town of Soma in northern Japan, giving the print its source for the title. The poem says, "Just when it is warm enough for grasses to sprout up and green shows through light snow, it's time for Hatsunokashi Tea." I was completely puzzled, for this crazy poem related to the printed image. No other scholars had yet unearthed the relationship between the image and the poem. Hatsunokashi Tea, meaning the first tea taste of the old, is in fact the name brand of a powdered green tea used for wabi tea gatherings. It is still available today and known for its rich aroma. However, when examining the work, neither the kettle with spout nor the large jar with the top knot are actually used in the preparation of wabi tea. After contemplating this puzzle for a few days and nights, on 3 o'clock one morning, the answer dawned on me. The assembled objects are connected with the Japanese verb pronounced kakeru. That has many, many meanings and many, maybe written with many kanji characters, all homophones. For example, we place kakeru, tea kettle on fire. Place kakeru, a cloth over something. Horses run, kakeru. Clouds and birds fly fast, kakeru. Apply glazing, kakeru, over a ceramic body. And kakeru can even mean to cross over something, as seen here in the crossed chopsticks, and so on. I'm certain that the 19th century poets enjoy such puzzling plays of words and competed for ever more creative associations. In this Surimono, Hokusai is experimenting with these homophones by visually uniting mismatched implements that do not belong to one another. It was Hokusai's trial of using the old existing words to make a fresh taste, just like the Hatsunokashi Tea, the first tea taste of the old. Next one, please. Another important aspect of this Surimono collection are the numerous images which illustrate foreign influences on the Japanese art and culture during the Edo period of forced isolation. Clearly, there was a market in Japan for foreign items secretively flowing into Japan. And these items were adapted for Japanese taste and use. Now, Japanese sweets, wagashi, are made of grain, beans, agar, vegetable gelatin, and various kinds of sugar. And the right-hand side shows them presented on raised lacquer tray. The well-known poet, Shindate Manzo II, whose poem is at the far left, the position of honor on the Surimono, is believed to have been a confectioner by trade. That makes perfect sense for this true-to-life presentation of the sweets, from the debossed orange-like sweets to the sugar-coated ones on the left. I was shocked to find out how much Japanese paid with costly silver and copper ores for the importation of sugar, cane sugar, in the early 18th century, until it began domestic production later in that century. In the Surimono on the left, the restrictions of trade since the 1630s under the strict rule of closed-door policy are even more flaunted in the choice of imagery. Here, the traditional moist bean cakes called yokan, seen in two different tones of browns, are paired with Portuguese-style dried sweets called aruhei, derived from the Portuguese alufeira. The three-dimensional faceted surface of the glass bowl is masterfully depicted here by the karazuri, or colorless, debossing technique, suggesting a delicate translucency. This type of cut glass is called gyaman in Japanese, derived from the Portuguese diamante, or diamond in English. So it is clear that foreign items were treasured and explored.
Thank you, Sadako. We've learned a lot about the diversity of taste among the cognoscenti who commissioned the Surimono at the time, and their diversity of aesthetic sensibility. So I'd like to ask Adam the same question, and I'm sure his taste is completely different, and I want to see what he's going to tantalize us with. Please, Adam.
Thanks, Joan. I have two prints to briefly introduce. This first Toyokuni print not only bears an accurate architectural likeness to the Ichimuraza, which was a theater that existed from the 1600s until it burned down in 1932 and wasn't rebuilt. But it is in fact the first and also the only print I've seen so far that has a sort of manipulable pop-up sort of effect with the curtain, which, as you can see here on the upper left, this is the print if you just see it and don't touch it. And then as you sort of move clockwise, you can see this curtain actually lifts up and rises on a scene of three actors in character for the play, I think, Three Famous Warriors Meeting on the High Road. Don't hold me to that title, something very close to that though. And so the straps holding it up as well, you see on the upper left, the straps holding up the curtain are actually a cryptic calendar, and they enumerate the long and short months for the year in which it was printed in 1822. And you can see at the very upper left of the picture of the print, a faintly inscribed poem by Edo no Hananari, the flower of Edo, who was in fact the daimyo of the Choshu province by the name of Mori Narimoto. And Choshu, of course, was a place of enduring but quiet resistance to the shogunate, the shogun Tokugawa in Edo, based in Edo. And so this print serves to highlight the social mixing that actors' patronage clubs allowed at a time when actors were technically legal non-persons. And I mean, there was a caste system, but they weren't even on the bottom rung of the ladder. They were entirely off of it. yet they met with some of the richest merchants and the most highly placed samurai in the country. And one can only wonder, thinking of this print and its the daimyo and where he was from, what sort of connections he would be making while ostensibly patronizing the theater in Edo. And on the next slide, of course, I was drawn to this print as soon as I saw it. I mean, it's a massive lobster with the little baby turtle coming up behind it. Not only that, but it's also a visual pun, a boat, meant to be placed under one's pillow. This print is you typically place under one's pillow the night before the new year for it to sail into your dreams and bring good fortune for the following year. The standard sort of boat print had a standard poem that went with it, and it usually depicted on a sort of Chinese treasure boat, the seven gods of fortune. But here it's adapted with symbols to suit the actor Don Judo. The seventh, there are the carp, which are also referenced in the one of the poems on the other print we showed earlier about his son being born. I'll pause again for background noise. There are the two sort of felicitous colors of peony, the red and the white. And they're the two sort of lucky bats sort of at the upper left vertex of the square. The square itself, of course, is not only the actor's family crest, but it's also the mast of this ship, which the lobster forms the sort of whole of. And so the turtle down below has its shell formed by the Chinese character kotobuki, or ju in Japanese for long life. And the poem above is a sort of incantation composed specially for the occasion of one of these boat prints. And its poems, its syllables actually read the same, exactly the same backwards and forwards, making it a long poetic palindrome. And I have to say my sort of eureka moment was my work process for these poems was quite enjoyable, because I would decide which poems I wanted to translate that day, and I would write them down several times, try to get it in my head and think about all of the punning and the play. And at some point I just looked at what I had written down, and this is after I've been working on it for about a week, and saw that, of course, it read the same backwards and forwards. And it seemed one of those things that seemed so obvious in retrospect. Then, of course, I found out that McKee had written, actually published an article about it later, but I have to say, independently derived the sort of the palindrome. And I can see if I can remember the poem from memory. I think up top it's celebrating the actor's son reaching the age. The earlier print he was born, and now the son is finally able to take the stage for the first time. And the poem along the top reads, I went to ask the young sprout of long famed generations what day it would be that he would finally burst with vigor into flower. Of course, referring to his flowering performance on the stage. And along the left is the son's reply, a haiku, a three-line poem, very short. Hey dad, can I give it a go? This time the curtain calls for me. And so with just this one print, I think it shows just the richness that you can find and the depth of one Surimono. Mm-hmm. What is the value of this? One of the values of this collection for Yale, being a research institution and placed before, although now because of various contingencies, not able to be worked on directly by students in the years and decades to come. How could they be used? And I can say even before the book was out, I was using Surimono from this collection in classes. The poems, as you can see several poems, you can see one more here on the right. The poems serve as sort of grist for practicing one's skill, transcribing calligraphy in sort of motivating, enjoyable small amounts. And then the decipher poem in turn sort of provides the material to exercise one's grasp of literary Japanese when translating these into English, because literary Japanese, of course, differs from modern Japanese. And one of my students, in fact, whom I believe is watching now, took on the whole series of 12 calendar prints that these two are drawn from as his final project for one of these classes, and he transcribed and translated them all. And he did a very good job, Ryan. Yo ganbatta. And from there, from the translations, you could go on to trace using online databases, the poetic allusions within the poems themselves. Many of the poems have classical Chinese, as you can see here on the left with Guan Yu, or prefaces in classical Chinese. And so, that can be used for practice as well. And even in terms of visual material, for lectures, I have shown enlarged details of the impressions to illustrate not only how woodblock prints are made, but to distinguish between different levels of craftsmanship and labor and different types of technique. And so the value of this collection as a training tool, I think, is very high. And this is not even to mention the type of close research and investigation involved in writing the book, which of course Sadako and I could only lend to a fraction of the overall collection. So I think there's quite a bit of funny, charming, and serious scholarship and poetry yet to be written come out of this collection.
Thank you, Adam. As someone who is not even quasi-literate in Japanese, it's illuminating to hear the depth of what's available to people who are trying to link imagery to calligraphy and the poetry to contemporary times. And this set is an amazing set of 12. And my hat's off to Ryan. Pretty daunting task for a student to tackle. And the entry in the book is excellent. So accolades to both of you.